Welcome to today's episode of the It's Been Said podcast. I'm your host, SAI Executive Director Lisa Remy. On this show, we dive into conversations about leadership, all in support of SAI's mission to encourage, develop, and empower Iowa's educational leaders and learners. Today's episode will highlight the Ames Community School District's PK and Beyond learning model. My guest today is Scott Grimes, Ames Community School District Superintendent. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to be
I
part of
appreciate.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule because I know how busy superintendents are. So thank you for giving time to SAI, but to really our members across the state of Iowa. Let's first start with just share with our listeners a little bit about the Ames Community School District, and then how did the PK and Beyond learning model even come to life?
I've always seen Ames as a unique community, a unique public school system when it came down to history and tradition. It's an honor to be up there. And from what I saw from the unique piece of coming up there is it had quite an ecosystem, a vibrant group of, I would say, individuals to support a school system. That's different than the Polk County area, but Story County itself has ISU Research Park. It has a DMAC, Hunsicker Center up there. Strong businesses around Ames and a lot of nonprofit partners that I was asked of how can we get the public education system Ames more involved with all of the resources that's around. So that conversation moved into a kind of to build a more of a PK-12 system that truly prepares students for life. The vision came from a year of listening. So we have been meetings with, it started with a conversation with ISU Research Park. We then brought in DMAC, the mayor of Ames, leaders, and then also the Alliance, which is their business sector group. So we had conversations for a year around kind of pathway of skills that we believe we could build into a PK and Beyond model. And then the model for me has always been in education, earlier better. The earlier we can get involved with career-based education, the better it would be. So my push has always been, how do we get what we want to do for a career down to preschool and start that conversation early? And then ultimately, I think I've had the opportunity to shake a lot of hands at graduations. Best seat of the house, as I tell people, within my 17 years. I would like to be able to shake every student's hand and then be able to answer this question, what's next for you? And I want them to be able to have an answer. Not an answer, I'm going to post-secondary, I'm going to a career, or I have the awards around my neck, or I have scholarships, but what is this person, what does this student graduate of Ames or public education want to become? And be able to answer that when they cross the stage.
Yeah, that's awesome. So awesome. So how does this PK and Beyond models core goal creating a unified pathway for career exploration? You talked about starting that as early as possible, even at the preschool level. So how does that mindset that you have differ from the traditional high school, I guess I'll call it, approach to career learning?
Well, most career programs, as you just said, don't start till high school. Typically, we start at high school. I think our state is working to move it into the middle school sector. I've always been the belief is we need to start earlier because our students need to have ideas or interests at an early age. So I figured, why don't we just start at age 4? The PK and Beyond came really from my idea. As a superintendent, I'm not a PK-12 superintendent. I should be a PK and Beyond superintendent. I need to focus on what the kids are going to do beyond the traditional PK-12 school system. And within that, we want to isolate electives, usually at that high school level, their entire system around readiness. We're looking at 3 phases. So you have the elementary PK, kind of PK-5 is awareness of jobs and I would say characters of employability skills. Exploration would then move naturally into your middle school where you typically have a lot of exploratories. It's a time to find themselves, and then the real world experiences come in our secondary. So it's not just real world experiences in our secondary. It's really to build that on. And ultimately, like shaking their hand at the graduation, the other thing I would like to ensure that we have for every student is an experience transcript. This is different than your traditional transcript. So when they walk across the stage or they graduate from Ames or the Story County area, my goal would be they would have an experience transcript that would show them every instance of an employability skill from preschool up to high school that they would be able to have conversations around.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Boy, that would be, I think you'd be leading probably in the nation, Scott, to have an experience transcript alongside just your traditional academic transcript. So, wow, that's fantastic. It's a great goal. So you mentioned here about the awareness phase, that PK through 5, and then you're really moving into that more exposure, exploration, 6 through 8. So talk a little bit more about that and what that might look like at that elementary level versus that middle school level.
Yeah, the elementary level would probably be more trying to embed your 21st century skills. What we're learning from having conversations with our businesses. Early grades would be kind of building the foundational skills. How do you collaborate, way to communicate? I think a big one now that businesses are working or having conversations around when we're meeting with them, perseverance. I think that we are having a hard time creating perseverance into our students, and how and what that means when it comes down to friendships or teams, or in a sense, what can be down the road when it comes down to a workforce. Also connecting, kind of getting along. I think a lot of that early childhood stuff we work on when it comes to play and recess and those things, but let's connect it more to the value of those when it comes down to employment. Middle school is more identity purpose, I believe. That's when you're lost. I was a sixth grade teacher. A lot of the kids, when I had sixth grade, was like, I don't really know what life is about. I'm changing. I think middle school is kind of how do we figure out how to get a stronger identity or purpose for those students? Help them see what the skills they have and how they can see themselves in the workplace. And then go on tours, meet employers, try hands-on activities, and begin short job shadows. Would really be more of the elementary, middle school aspect. And I think overall, we've been having conversations around this can probably reduce a lot of anxiety and stress in kids, because they will start to see a purpose and find value into the education system. That right now we're having a hard time connecting students to value, to why am I in school? Um, so I think it will reduce and help with mental health and anxiety and finding purpose in their life at earlier stages.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because we always talk about really helping students understand the why behind what they're learning, no matter what subject area they're in. So when you think about, like, traditionally, we have really kind of focused those career readiness skills more in our career technical ed courses, but in your model here, this pre-K and beyond really is looking across the board. So what does that look like in your typical, like, let's talk middle school for a minute, that typical social studies, math, English classroom?
Um, this is where the big ask will be for the shift of thinking when it comes down to classroom. I think we always talk about connecting it to real world experiences. There's a lot of taglines in public education that we use that makes it sound like this is what we're doing. When we connect it to a report card or to an experience card, it's gonna to help with that. So, the key is we're not turning algebra into a job training class. We're not making it a magnet classroom or a magnet school. Instead, we're trying to show students how real world applications live inside of the content they already are learning. Math would be using, I would say, real world experiences from businesses that we're connecting with. So give us some problems that you use on the floor or you use on your job site, Let's work that into classrooms as real life. Like this came from a Dan Foss employer in our district. Your parents might work there. How can we connect with that with our math programming? It's not easy. We have created a committee specifically dedicated towards career ready, and that is a PK-12 committee, which is probably unique. I think most of that time it's just connected in the secondary.
Right.
CTE committee. So we created a specific, reworked all of our committees in the district around job embedded work. The biggest thing is selling it to the teachers also, as we're trying to tell them, teachers, we're not adding more content. We're just illuminating or highlighting the relevance of what students are already learning. And we're creating that system for teachers to use and not expecting teachers to go out and create that themselves.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a really important point. Because oftentimes when change happens, it's like, oh, everything's going to be different. And it's really taking what we currently have and just embedding some of those other skills and having those conversations, connecting to what's happening in the businesses, as you said. So, Scott, you talked about this committee that's putting together kind of your career readiness, and it's PK through 12. How, and I hear you really wanting to emphasize that real world, and it's going to be a bit of a change in some instances. How do you see business partners either participating in that conversation, or how do you ensure that you're getting their voices so that you know that you are doing what is needed in the community that you all serve?
So the internal committee, as I'm calling it, will have a mirrored external committee.
Okay.
So we will actually have, after a previous meeting and interest base, we have a very large external committee that will be created. It's going to be called our steering committee. Everything I've been looking at is how can we create that same similar system, but having two mirroring committees that are going to support each other on one goal. So that will be the connection with our businesses. That'll help with continuing to listen, what's changing in the Story County region. That is also made up of our university. ISU Research Park, DMAC is on that committee. We have a state level work-based school to work individual, as well as our mayor and leaders that will be part of that steering committee, and businesses like Dan Foss and Sukup and big players that want to be involved in this.
Mhm.
I'm
So
not
how
sure if I
did,
answered that, but is that
yeah, no, you did. Yep, yep. So was it fairly easy, the ask for those busy business people to say, hey, I want to sit at the table?
yeah, it was an easy ask. I think it was because they've been waiting for it. And so my goal has been, we should look at every community in every area. Public education should be your top priority. Next should be your community, because as I say, people move to a community for where they want their kids to go to school. They want it for a job, and there's a lot of good job opportunities in that area. And then they also want an entertainment or something to connect with. That's where I think ISU is actually more of a partner with the community than it is academic growth. That is a very hard conversation with ISU, but they have connected with understanding how that works. Like your employees at ISU have kids that will be going to public education. Your businesses will have kids that go to public education. The common theme in that area is your public school system should be at the top, and that should be the conversation around it. And so that has been a shift of conversation, but every meeting I've had people want to be part of it or have conversations around it. I've had no one leave a meeting and not want to ask when the next meeting is. And I just think you have to build that momentum. It's now a matter of we're having to select who we can have, because we can't have 40 people show up at every meeting, but we have found ways to help communicate and get that word out, and so that everybody's always going to be involved in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. There's always the question of, is it the school that creates the economic development, or is it the economic development that creates the school? And I appreciate you lifting the public school because I do think they're foundational um, to all that happens in a community.
It
So,
is.
yeah, you had mentioned several times about what I would call proficiencies that our businesses are looking toward or want in their next employees. The Iowa Business Council recently, with work with businesses, some really large businesses on there have said, hey, here's the what we really want. Perseverance was one of those that we really want to see in our employees. So, and maybe you kind of answered this already, Scott, due to the committee, but how do you see taking what businesses, what you're hearing from businesses, the proficiencies that they want and need in their next group of employees, and putting those and inserting those into the curriculum? Really, I'd say at any level, but specifically, I'm thinking about that elementary level first.
Yeah, we have found that you're right. The mindset is Iowa Business Council proficiencies are typically aimed for adults
Mhm.
or upper, young adults, which would be our high schoolers. We are going to work on translating and breaking those down by skill, and then by age appropriate behaviors. For example, collaboration becomes, we talked a little bit about this earlier, learning to share, taking turns, solving conflicts at the younger grades. So how do we break those words into usable examples that students can understand and that are appropriate? Communication really comes down to the earlier in middle schools expressing needs or presenting a simple idea, sharing an idea, problem solving, completing a task together. These would all be examples that would help to create that continuum of age 4 to age 18 and beyond. We need to look at the Iowa Business Council and job embedded skills to be broken down also as its own curriculum.
We're pausing for a brief commercial break. We'll be right back to continue our conversation. Stick around.
Are you ready to support the whole child with smarter assessments? The Pearson Assessment for Learning Suite helps you personalize support for every student, academically, behaviorally, and beyond. Get a holistic view, uncover learning gaps, monitor progress, and identify gifted students. From Ames Web Plus for academic screening, NNAT3 for gifted identification, and NAVI for personalized instruction, Pearson empowers educators to make data-informed decisions. Accelerate learning and help every child thrive. Visit pearsonassessments.com/learning-suite to learn more.
And now, back to our conversation on leadership.
You mentioned several times about committees or partnerships. So it's evident that those are important to you, and that collaboration among both your internal folks as well as your business folks. You've created kind of this working group, this collaborative working group that even goes, I think, beyond just Ames Community School District. You've invited other school districts into that relationship. So, what does that look like when you start thinking about the ISU you've talked about DMAC, you've talked about businesses, and now even incorporating other Story County community school districts?
I call it a Story County Plus group and have been getting small groups together to have conversations around the same topic. You've heard me say it started with some big names. Ames CSD is the biggest name, our school district. DMAC, ISU, Ames the area, 3M, Danfoss, Sukup. And then I call it a 60-40 split. 60% of the work is based on schools. 40% is anybody else who would like to be part of the PK and Beyond collaborative working group. That's typically different. I think when you bring in ISU or DMAC or other groups, they want the 60%. This is how we can support you as a district. I'm like, no, this needs to be driven by public education. This needs to be driven by the schools and surrounding areas. In some of that heavy lift that we're trying to do is a kind of a single entry point for partners. So whatever work we do at Ames, we'll have individuals, hopefully staff that can reach out to our neighboring districts to support what they're doing and have kind of a common conversation, maybe type of a PLC support group that will be led through that process. Shared communication systems with with the collaborative group, kind of ensuring that experiences align with the workforce needs, and not only the workforce needs of the future, but definitely the workforce needs in our Story County area.
How do you see this really being a benefit to the Story County area?
I see it unique to Story County because we don't have anyone else to compete with other than Polk County. But I am seeing that Story County has everything it needs to focus on itself and spend its energy with what's best for the school districts, the businesses, post-secondary opportunities. ISU Research Park has global companies that come and work for them, work in their research park. So we have access to companies beyond Story County as well to support this. And then I also see it as not just Ames's 4,400 students. When I think about it, we're 10,000 plus strong. When you look at all the districts around Story County, I see it as a larger mass that we can actually have a bigger influence than just the Ames Community School District.
Have you yourself thought about this, or in the committee conversations? How will you know that this model is being successful and what the long-term impact will be?
Well, ideally, if we had like a 5-hour graduation, it would be a handshake to every kid and they'd be able to answer that question for me.
Some families might not want that.
No, I know, but that would be the ideal ending result. Or the other thing will be an experience transcript. That will be an end result. But to get there, we're going to need to figure out how can we measure the growth of employability skills? How do we find purpose and identity for students? How do we get that through their expression of their reflections or their conversations? How do we get that in more of a conversation base? We're going to definitely be having partner feedback. We will continue to expand our reach to not only our large corporations that work globally, but there's a lot of smaller businesses in the community that need jobs just as much as anything else. So the more we connect the wide range and have them sign up to be part of our communication plan, part of our feedback group, the more it'll show that it's building, that it's another mark on how we can keep track of it. Then the natural is what everyone always looks at. How many internships do you have? What's your apprenticeships? What IRCs do you have? Certificate. Those are the easy things. Those are usually tracked on a transcript. And then really following up long-term conversations with students who are staying in Iowa. And are they staying locally in Story County? And what local sectors are they working in beyond going to a 4-year or 2-year degree? Ames can lead with the clarity and invite others to work. But the last thing we want is we are not trying to take any identity away from any school district, because every district has their own identity, their own needs, and their own direction and time spent. But we all are wanting employment at the end for our students, and we want them to have success beyond high school.
Yeah, we can all agree on that, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So Scott, you are in an area where there's several businesses. As you mentioned, there's higher education, so ISU, DMAC. In the state of Iowa, we know there's a lot of smaller rural districts that may not have the same access to the number of businesses and so forth. What advice might you give superintendents on that would like to do this and see the benefit for their students as well? How should they start exploring this idea?
You have to know your system. I've been in 3 very unique school districts. Each one had their own needs. You have to be flexible as an administrator, as a superintendent and an administrator. to be, I'm not going in to fix them. I'm going in to find out what they need. And sometimes that may not align with my own direction that I wanted to go. So you need to know your system. Education has evolved. You have to stay flexible. We need to promise families that students will leave with purpose. And I think any district can have that as a message. You have to promise the same thing to parents that I have to promise to parents. And I think we have to promise something different than a viable curriculum, a safe learning environment. I want to ensure that your child, no matter what size district, walks out with a purpose and a direction that they want to go. You have to start listening to your communities, your areas. You have to listen to businesses, nonprofits, whatever group you have, no matter how big or small it is, they have an influence on the direction you'll go. Smaller districts, I would find the local coffee places. I find where majority of the trucks are parked in the morning before school. I would have coffee. I'd have conversations. I sat out their feedback. So it doesn't matter what your size, but you know where your movers and shakers and communicators are in your district. You need to find them to have those conversations. Start early. Don't wait till employment skills in secondary. Start as young as you can. I think the more parents and families you have involved in the conversation will create that support. So I don't look at it as our secondary. We have so many that we would have conversations around when it comes down to parents and future. If we can move that to every parent in the district and finding value and purpose, you're going to have a bigger momentum for your movement for the district, or to have buy-in for where you want to go. And I think the biggest thing is, as you create and build that system, it needs to be predictable. Predictability is good for partners. They want to kind of know where you're heading. They don't want to feel it's just going to end. And I think the biggest thing is tell your own story. When your vision's authentic, partners want to join it.
Well, again, thank you. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. And just love the work that you're doing and spearheading.
You're very welcome. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
If today's discussion sparked ideas for your own setting, consider taking a small first step, perhaps by reaching out to Scott Grimes to discuss how you may start a similar process in your community, or possibly by putting together some stakeholders to begin the discussion there in your community. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a colleague or a team who might benefit from hearing it. And until next time, take care and be well.